On December 3, 2024, Captain Ibrahim Traoré made a move that could unravel the fragile stability of West Africa. Burkina Faso's military leader issued a formal demand to Togo: extradite Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the man Traoré overthrew in 2022, or risk a full diplomatic rupture. But this wasn't just political theater. Traoré accused Damiba of orchestrating a foreign-backed assassination plot targeting him and 19 of his top military commanders. If the allegations are true, this wasn't a coup attempt. It was a decapitation strike. Damiba, once Burkina Faso's leader after his own coup in January 2022, was ousted by Traoré just 8 months later. Since then, he's lived in exile, largely staying out of the spotlight. But according to Traoré's government, Damiba never stopped plotting. Intelligence reports claim he coordinated with foreign mercenaries and used Togo as a staging ground for operatives who infiltrated Burkina Faso through covert border crossings. The goal, Traoré alleges, was to eliminate the country's entire military command structure in one coordinated operation. If successful, Burkina Faso would have been left leaderless, vulnerable, and ripe for external manipulation. Togo's proximity makes it a convenient refuge for exiled figures with scores to settle. The two countries share a porous border, and Lomé has historically maintained ties with France and other Western powers. For Traoré, a Pan-Africanist firebrand who has expelled French troops and pivoted toward Russia, Togo's sheltering of Damiba isn't just diplomatic courtesy, it's complicity. By demanding extradition, Traoré is drawing a line. Either Togo hands over Damiba, or it becomes an accessory to what Burkina Faso is calling an act of war. This accusation lands at a moment when the Sahel is already fragmenting. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a breakaway bloc that recently withdrew from ECOWAS, the regional economic community. They've positioned themselves as sovereignists resisting foreign interference, particularly from France and the broader West. Togo, meanwhile, remains an ECOWAS loyalist, closely aligned with France and hosting French military assets. The extradition demand isn't just about Damiba. It's a test of where Togo stands in a region increasingly split between pro-Western and anti-Western camps. The mercenary element adds another layer. Traoré's government claims the coup plot involved foreign fighters, though it hasn't named their nationality or backing. In recent years, Russian Wagner Group operatives have been active in Mali and the Central African Republic, while Western private military contractors maintain ties with governments like Togo and Côte d'Ivoire. If mercenaries were involved, the question becomes, who hired them? Was this a rogue operation by Damiba and his loyalists, or did it have state-level backing? And if so, from where? Traoré's own rise to power was violent and swift. He positioned himself as a young, uncompromising leader willing to break with the past. His popularity surged after he challenged French influence and accused former allies of betraying Burkina Faso's sovereignty. But his government faces immense pressure. Jihadist insurgencies control large swaths of the country, displacing millions and draining state resources. A successful coup would have thrown the nation into chaos, potentially collapsing what little stability remains. That's why Traoré is framing this as existential. The assassination plot, if real, wasn't just about removing him. It was about erasing the military structure holding the country together. Togo has not publicly responded to the extradition demand, but silence carries its own message. Handing over Damiba would alienate Togo from Western allies who may view him as a counterweight to Traoré's radicalism. Refusing, however, risks turning Burkina Faso into an open adversary. And in a region where alliances are shifting faster than ever, that's a dangerous calculation. The coup was supposed to happen in silence. 20 men were marked for death. But before the first shot could be fired, Burkina Faso's military intelligence had already intercepted the plan. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a collapse. And the speed at which it unraveled reveals just how deeply Captain Ibrahim Traoré's government had penetrated the conspiracy from the inside. Intelligence operatives had been tracking communications for weeks. Encrypted messages between Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the exiled former president, and operatives inside Burkina Faso were being monitored in real time. The intercepts revealed names, routes, and timelines. Damiba wasn't just coordinating from Togo. He was actively recruiting. Mercenaries were being mobilized. Officers inside the Burkinabè armed forces were being contacted. And the target list was explicit: Ibrahim Traoré and 19 senior military commanders. This wasn't an attempt to seize power through a conventional coup. It was an assassination matrix designed to decapitate the entire command structure in one synchronized strike. But the plotters made a critical miscalculation. They assumed Traoré's government was vulnerable, that loyalty within the military was fractured, and that the intelligence apparatus was too weak to detect foreign-backed infiltration. They were wrong on all three counts. By the time Damiba's operatives began crossing the border from Togo, Burkina Faso's counterintelligence units were already waiting. The routes had been identified, the collaborators had been flagged, and the window for execution had closed before it ever truly opened. When the coup attempt failed, the response was immediate. Several military officers were arrested. These weren't low-level conspirators. They were individuals who had facilitated Damiba's movements, provided intelligence to external operatives, and helped coordinate the logistics of what was meant to be a mass killing. Some of them had been instrumental in helping Damiba escape back to Togo after the plot collapsed. Their arrest sent a clear message: betrayal wouldn't be hidden, and collaboration with foreign elements wouldn't be tolerated. This is where the stakes become clear. If the intelligence operation had failed, if even one key intercept had been missed, Burkina Faso's military leadership would have been wiped out. The country, already struggling with jihadist insurgencies across its northern and eastern regions, would have descended into chaos. There would have been no command structure to coordinate defense operations, no political authority to prevent a power vacuum, and no buffer to stop foreign actors from exploiting the instability. The coup's failure wasn't just a tactical victory. It was the difference between continuity and collapse. Traoré's government has not publicly disclosed the full scope of the intelligence operation, but the results speak for themselves. The fact that arrests were made so quickly suggests that surveillance had been ongoing for some time. It also suggests that the conspiracy was larger than initially understood. Damiba didn't act alone. He had collaborators inside Burkina Faso's military, individuals who still held positions of influence and access. Rooting them out required precision, and the fact that the government moved decisively indicates they had been building a case long before the plot reached its final stage. What this reveals is a shift in how Traoré's administration approaches internal security. Unlike previous governments that relied heavily on external intelligence partnerships, often with France or other Western allies, Traoré has prioritized building domestic counterintelligence capabilities. The intercepts, the arrests, and the rapid neutralization of the plot all point to a security apparatus that operates independently and with significant reach. That independence matters. It means Traoré isn't reliant on foreign powers to protect his government from internal threats. And it signals to potential conspirators that the old playbook, relying on external backing and porous intelligence gaps, no longer works. But here's the question that lingers. How many others are still embedded? The arrests captured those who facilitated Damiba's escape and aided the logistics. But intelligence operations rarely uncover every node in a network. There are likely others who remain undetected, officers who sympathize with Damiba's vision or who oppose Traoré's Pan-Africanist pivot. And as long as those individuals remain inside the system, the threat doesn't disappear. It just goes dormant. Burkina Faso isn't just accusing Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba of plotting coup. It's accusing France of orchestrating the instability that would justify its return. And that accusation, whether provable or not, is reshaping how the Sahel views its neighbors. Because if Traoré's government is right, then Togo and Ivory Coast aren't just offering refuge to an exiled leader. They're serving as staging grounds for a foreign power trying to reclaim influence it lost. The narrative coming out of Ouagadougou is direct. France, which was expelled from Burkina Faso in 2023 after decades of military presence, never accepted its departure. The loss of bases in the Sahel, first in Mali, then Niger, and finally Burkina Faso, represented a strategic collapse. French counter-terrorism operations, intelligence networks, and access to uranium and gold. All of it evaporated in less than 3 years. But according to Traoré's government, France didn't retreat. It adapted. And the new strategy isn't boots on the ground. It's proxy destabilization. Togo and Ivory Coast are framed as the key enablers. Both remain firmly within France's sphere of influence. Both host French military personnel and maintain close economic and diplomatic ties with Paris. And both share borders with Burkina Faso, making them ideal platforms for covert operations. The accusation is that these states allowed Damiba to operate from their territory, facilitated the movement of mercenaries, and provided logistical support for a plot designed to trigger chaos. The endgame, according to this framing, wasn't just removing Traoré. It was creating a vacuum so severe that international intervention, led or supported by France, would become unavoidable. This isn't happening in isolation. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have all accused France of supporting armed groups, funding opposition movements, and using regional proxies to destabilize governments that expelled French forces. Whether or not these accusations are fully substantiated, they become the dominant narrative across the alliance of Sahel states. And that narrative is resonating domestically. In Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey, anti-French sentiment has become a unifying force. Any government seen as accommodating French interests is viewed with suspicion. Any state that maintains ties with Paris is considered complicit. For Togo and Ivory Coast, this creates a serious problem. Both are ECOWAS members. Both benefit from regional trade and stability. But their alignment with France puts them at odds with the Sahel's new power bloc. And if the accusations against them gain traction, they risk being isolated not just diplomatically, but economically and militarily. Burkina Faso's extradition demand isn't just about Damiba. It's a test. If Togo refuses, it confirms, in Traoré's view, that Lomé is more loyal to Paris than to regional solidarity. And that confirmation could have consequences far beyond this single case. The broader implication is that West Africa is splitting into two camps. On one side, the alliance of Sahel states, which has withdrawn from ECOWAS, aligned with Russia, and rejected Western security partnerships. On the other, the coastal ECOWAS states, which remain integrated into French and American security frameworks and continue to benefit from Western investment. The coup attempt, real or exaggerated, becomes a symbol of that divide. It's not just about whether Damiba tried to kill Traoré. It's about whether regional states will be used as tools for foreign powers trying to reverse the Sahel's break with the West. France has not publicly commented on the specific allegations, but its historical pattern in the region is well documented. From Operation Barkhane to its support for transitional governments, Paris has consistently positioned itself as a stabilizing force in the Sahel. But that narrative has collapsed among the populations it claimed to protect. And now, governments that once cooperated with France are treating it as a hostile actor. That shift didn't happen overnight. It's the result of decades of perceived exploitation, broken promises, and military interventions that failed to stop jihadist expansion. Togo has been given a choice: extradite Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, or become an enemy of Burkina Faso. And that's not just rhetoric. Mali and Niger have already made it clear. If Togo refuses, there will be consequences. This isn't just about one man. It's about whether African states will protect each other's sovereignty, or whether they'll continue to serve as safe havens for exiled leaders plotting to overthrow their successors. And right now, the answer to that question is about to reshape the entire region. Burkina Faso's extradition demand isn't a legal formality. It's a diplomatic ultimatum. Traoré's government has framed Togo's decision as a referendum on African unity. Either Lomé respects Burkina Faso's sovereignty and hands over a man accused of orchestrating mass assassination, or it signals that sheltering coup plotters is acceptable as long as they align with the right foreign interests. The language coming out of Ouagadougou is unambiguous. Refusal to extradite Damiba will be interpreted as an act of hostility, not just against the government, but against the Burkinabè people. And that framing matters, because it transforms a bilateral dispute into a question of Pan-African principle. Mali and Niger didn't wait to see how Togo would respond. Both governments issued public statements backing Burkina Faso's position. This wasn't symbolic solidarity. It was a coordinated message from the Alliance of Sahel states, the breakaway bloc that has positioned itself as the region's sovereignist axis. The implication is clear. If Togo shields Damiba, it won't just face pressure from Ouagadougou. It will face isolation from three military governments that control a significant portion of West Africa's territory and have shown they're willing to act outside traditional diplomatic norms. Economic corridors could close, border cooperation could freeze, and security intelligence sharing, critical in a region fighting jihadist insurgencies, could collapse. This is where the stakes become clear. Togo is being forced to choose between two incompatible allegiances. On one side, France and the broader ECOWAS framework, which still views Damiba as a legitimate political actor and Traore as a destabilizing radical. On the other, the Sahel bloc, which sees Damiba as a traitor and Traore as a leader defending his nation's sovereignty against foreign interference. There's no middle ground here. Any decision Togo makes will be interpreted as a declaration of alignment. And in a region where alliances are hardening, neutrality is no longer an option. But here's what makes this moment different from previous diplomatic standoffs. Traore isn't negotiating from a position of weakness. Despite repeated assassination attempts, despite internal conspiracies, despite a brutal jihadist insurgency that controls vast swaths of his country, he's still standing. And more importantly, he still commands loyalty. The military hasn't fractured. The intelligence apparatus that intercepted the coup plot remains operational. And public support, driven by his anti-French rhetoric and his refusal to bow to external pressure, remains strong. That resilience gives him leverage. It means that when he issues an ultimatum, regional actors have to take it seriously, because dismissing him as unstable or vulnerable hasn't worked. Mali and Niger's backing amplifies that leverage. Together, the three countries represent a bloc that has already demonstrated it's willing to defy ECOWAS sanctions, expel foreign troops, and reconfigure security partnerships toward Russia. They're not bluffing. They've already rewritten the rules once. And if Togo refuses extradition, the diplomatic and economic repercussions won't be theoretical. They'll be immediate. Trade routes that pass through Burkina Faso and Niger could be restricted. Togolese nationals working in the Sahel could face visa complications. And intelligence cooperation on border security, which Togo relies on to manage its own northern vulnerabilities, could disappear overnight. Traore's survival through multiple coup attempts has also created a narrative that's difficult for his opponents to counter. Every failed plot reinforces the idea that he's protected, whether by popular will, military loyalty, or something less tangible. And that perception matters in a region where legitimacy is often measured by durability. The longer he stays in power, the more entrenched his government becomes, and the harder it is for exiled figures like Damiba to present themselves as viable alternatives. What happens next will set a precedent. If Togo hands over Damiba, it signals that the Sahel bloc has enough power to compel compliance even from ECOWAS-aligned states. If Togo refuses, it confirms that West Africa is now operating under two separate systems of accountability, one for French-aligned governments and one for sovereignist regimes. Either way, the old regional order is gone, and the question isn't whether it will be replaced. It's who gets to write the new rules.